All right, guys. This is one of those things we got to do. Talking about the social structure of the High Middle Ages. It's not fun, it's not fancy, but it is what it is. So we'll just put our heads down and bang our way through it. And as you can see, as a result of the Crusades, there is a resurgence in cultural diffusion, and the Crusades cause an increase in demand for luxury goods from Asia. And it's the small Italian trading states here in the Mediterranean that are going to help facilitate that. And so while we have the Crusades opening things up, and we've got new towns and townships being created, it's going to take a while to change the social structure. And the social structure of these new towns is still peasant to noble, and the clergy is always in there. But the traditional framework is going to stay the same for now. Society throughout the Middle Ages continues to have three basic groups. We got the nobility, right? We have the clergy, and we have the peasants who do the work for everybody else. And now, included in the peasants, are these new long-distance merchants who are making a lot of money, but they're still considered peasants. The nobles are the highest social class. Not all of them are super wealthy men, but some are. Some control large tracts of land, tiny kingdoms. So if I'm a lord, you and I have a lot of wealth and I'm a big timer, my tiniest and poorest knight is also a noble. But he may have just a few acres, some small landowners. This is almost the same as the feudalism that existed in China and Japan at the same time. The nobility is going to live off the labor of everybody else. Everyone is considered beneath them. I, the lord of the manor, or the king or prince of the empire, I'm in charge. For a noble, his job was the army. Fighting was his profession. It gives the lord a chance to win glory, to gain a reputation, to gain even more land, to add to their wealth. And if I am successful in conquering a neighboring empire or kingdom, then everything within it is fair game for me and my soldiers. Peacetime brought boredom to sitting around doing nothing. There was too much time for trouble or self-reflection. So the nobles draw a code of behavior known as chivalry. This is proper knightly behavior. You were a defender of the church. You had to help out those less fortunate than you. It was very similar to the Japanese code of Bushido. And depending on your level of nobility, all knights were supposed to defend the church. Being dubbed and or created a knight was nearly a religious sacrament, as priests and bishops are going to get involved in this because you are a defender of the church. And because there's a lot of new money townspeople or new money merchants who wanted political power, knighthood is restricted to those only of noble birth. So once again, all nobles are knights and all knights are nobles. And a code of etiquette was created where your behavior was just as important as your ability to fight. Knights had to be literate. They had to be able to sing, to recite poetry, to play some type of musical instrument. And so education and dancing and learning would occupy the nobles' behavior during peacetime. Second social class is the religious clergy. And there are two types of clergy. These are monks who live secluded from the world in their monasteries. They don't go out and interact with average Joe. Many of them follow the Benedictine order, or they strictly adhere to the strict Cluny reforms, where we are going to stay on our spiritual mission. And by the 1200s, as we're nearing the Renaissance, the regular clergy are going to be divided into two types. Some are going to stay in their monasteries, while other groups, like the Dominican and Franciscan orders, are going to go out into the world and preach and spread the word, like the apostles of old. You're going to spread, you're going to be a missionary. And it's very difficult to be a monk. Franciscans, Dominicans, and later on Jesuits, there was an age requirement. And there was a process similar to a military recruitment where you have to know what you're signing on for. You get a trial period before you undertake your final vows. And when you give that final vow, that's it. There's no backing out. And those who took their vows as a monk and their strictness were highly respected. The other type of clergy is like your village parish priest or even a bishop or all the way up to the Pope. You're called secular clergy. These are people who go out and they do the Christian Mass for the normal people. They're not isolated. They're not locked up in a monastery. So from the hierarchy, from bishops to the head of a large cathedral to the tiny parish priest, even some poor clergyman who was a villager who held a second part-time job as a teacher, part-time minister, they are known as secular clergy. They work with the people. But overall, most clergy members lived off the labor of others. They would receive tax money, especially the upper clergy, the bishops and the archbishops. They would get money from church-imposed taxes, what was collected in the plate at church, and rent from church-owned lands. The best farmland belonged to the church. And so some monks and bishops were able to become extremely wealthy, and they lived extravagantly. And this is what Pope Gregory and the Cluny reforms tried to fix. This is just garbage. The people are out here starving, and you're living like this. So if you took advantage of your social position, that was highly frowned upon. But churches were separate from the state. Church property could not be taxed by the emperor. If a clergyman committed a crime, he was tried by a church court, not a civilian one. And so, as corrupt church officials were placed in high-ranking positions by kings to secure political and monetary resources, the people began to get angry at the power the church had, and it begins to lose its death grip on power ever so slightly. The third and largest social class is going to be the peasants. Peasants do the dirty work. They do the work for virtually everyone else. And they lived on the estates of the nobility, on the manors. Most were considered the Lord's property. He could hire them, fire them, buy them, sell them, you name it. Most, well, all had to give a certain amount of what they made to the lord of the manor, usually a third. And the only freedom that many had was they were able to divide the labor up amongst each other. Didn't matter as long as you got the work done. I'll work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you work Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Doesn't matter as long as the job gets done. There are two basic types of manor houses. Number one is the servant or servile, or whoops, number one is the free manor. I'm sorry. And the free manor, or no, servant or servile, there we go, is almost like plantation slavery, except you weren't ripped from one continent and brought to another one. The servant on the servile manor had no skills. They had no special privileges, and they had to do what the Lord said when He said it. No freedom, no choice, no anything. The Lord had all political and judicial power. And the Lord also owned the artisan's mill. He may own the grist mill where you had to grind your wheat into flour. He may own the blacksmith's anvil. So while you give him a third, if you need to use the blacksmith or the mill, you have to pay him more. You don't have a choice. You were there and you worked and you did what you were told when you were told. Second type of manor is slightly better. It's known as the free manor, where people owned either a small amount of land and they traded it for the Lord's protection. Or they had a skill and owned tools, and they traded it for protection. I will work for you, I will give my land to you if you keep me safe. Now on free manors, we have a little more rights and privileges than the servile manor because you chose to work with the Lord. Key word with, you were bringing something to the table. So being a peasant was not easy or enjoyable. A smart lord of the manor would try and keep his peasants somewhat happy, as again, he depended upon them for everything. The monarch, the nobles, knights, vassals, the peasants, and everybody else. And as we move toward the Renaissance in the year 1300, the manors are going to change. Populations are going to increase with new food and crops from the Crusades. The land on manors shrunk. There were more people there. And there was new technology, like the horse collar, a big leather pad that fit over the horse's neck so they could draw a plow called the moldboard plow. M-O-L-D-B-O-A-R-D. I will tell you about it in class. And the three-field system allowed more land to be cleared. More food means more people. And this will cause a change in taxation. Up till now, each fief or manor only had to pay a certain amount of taxes based on what they produced. But now, instead of taxes being levied on a village as a whole, each individual person now has to pay taxes. And you could only pay them in money, in cash currency. With trade being reborn out of the Crusades, some peasants were able to rent out their land to make money, and they were able to overcome their low status of poverty-stricken. The only problem was, in the old days, when times were tough on a manor, the Lord knew it. He could lessen your tax amount or not let you pay taxes for a year or two if there was a famine or a plague. Now that rents and taxes are due in cash, you don't get a break anymore. So with that freedom comes extra responsibility. And this is going to change things when we get to the University of Paris, known as Sorbonne, or in these new towns, like one of my favorite towns in England, known as Salisbury here, out there close to Stonehenge. Things are going to change with this guy, known as William the Conqueror. All right, hopefully we'll be able to finish this up tomorrow. Thanks for watching and listening, and that's a wrap.